Joining us now is a great friend of mine and truly terrific person, Pastor James Kaddis. Pastor, welcome back to the program.
Charlie, glad to be here with you, brother.
So James, you and I have been texting for quite some time, and to your great credit, you have come out with great moral and biblical and theological clarity as to how Christians should view this election. Right now, there are millions of Christians that are sitting on the sideline considering not to vote or to vote for Kamala. How should Christians view their biblical duty these next 24 hours?
Well, this is a very remarkable place that we're in right now. And I'm going to come from a perspective that a lot of people might not necessarily take, because an overwhelming majority of the church, especially in the United States of America, refrains from having a conversation regarding Bible prophecy and the things that are going to be happening in the last days. And what we're hearing a lot of in the church right now is, well, Jesus is coming back any moment. The church is gonna, or the country's gonna burn to the ground. It doesn't matter. So we might as well just run away and not vote, not participate, not to mention the fact that Trump is kind of an unscrupulous guy. And although he might be the lesser of two evils, he's not the person that we want to vote for. And I want to make myself very, very clear. I'm going to simply start by saying that I think that President Trump will go down as one of the greatest presidents we have ever had in U.S. history. I want to make myself clear in saying that, especially from the perspective of a man whose mom and dad were both born and raised in Egypt. I'm first generation born into this country, and I very clearly understand the dynamic that's going on in the Middle East, all of the things that are happening. And if you study Bible prophecy and you know what the Bible says concerning the end times, we are seeing the manifestation of so many of those things beginning to formulate right now. And Jesus told us a parable. This parable is referred to or known as oftentimes the parable of the talents. And the thing that's interesting about this parable is Jesus basically talked about three different guys. One guy who basically was given 5 talents, another who was given 2, another who was given 1. The 2 who were given 5 and the other one that was given 2, they multiplied their efforts and received or made more talents, and God praised them and said, well done, good and faithful servants. And yet the one decided that he was going to bury his talent. Now, what's unique about this are 2 very specific variables. Number one, he tells his master in this story, I was fearful basically of you. This is in essence the translation. And I know you're a man who reaps where you have not sown. And in essence, you're a hardened man. So I just basically decided that I was going to bury this. And I think if you consider the response of Jesus, it was heavier. The response that Jesus told us this master had, it was, hey, listen, you lazy and slothful servant, you evil and slothful servant. And the thing that's interesting about this is to consider the fact that the context that Jesus tells this parable in was one very powerful place, and that was the end of the world. He was sharing this parable in the end of the world. And what he was saying was, I've told you, I've given you talents. And those talents, the valuable treasure that I've given you, is knowledge of what is going to happen in the last days. And I don't want you taking that knowledge and burying it in the ground by saying, Maranatha, I can't wait until I fly. I can't wait until I fly, and do nothing about it. He wants us to realize that he could come at any moment. The rapture could happen at any moment, which is why we should be in school board meetings, which is why we should be voting, which is why we should certainly be voting for somebody like Trump rather than somebody like Kamala Harris, because Kamala Harris represents every evil and wicked thing that you can possibly imagine.
Yes.
And you can see manifestations of it in every corner. And it's very dark, but it's very important that we point this out. I don't know about you, Charlie, but I don't want to be the guy who's caught burying my talent going, well, Lord, I knew you were going to come back and I was really scared. And so I just knew that the world was going to blow up anyway. Jesus would say, you are a wicked and you are a slothful servant, and you did not do with that knowledge. I have that knowledge. I know. I'm able to understand the geopolitics of the world, and I act on it. And that's what I'm doing. And based on that is why I make my decision.
James, if is it ever in the Bible say that you should allow evil to spread if you have an ability to stop it in the end times? Is that biblical?
No way. As a matter of fact, we are given a mandate in the Bible. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 3 says that the final Antichrist cannot even reveal himself until the church is removed from the earth, which means we're given a mandate. And the reason for that in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 6 and 7 is that we are the restraining force. The church, filled with the Spirit of God, are the restrainers that keep it from coming into fruition. The Bible even goes so far as to tell us a pattern of what totalitarian rule does and what it looks like in the end times. In Revelation chapter 6, it talks about a white horse, it talks about a red horse, a dark horse or a black horse, and a pale horse. The white horse, a totalitarian ruler who comes in, who rules without a bow or an arrow. He convinces everybody about a revolution, and it's speaking, of course, of the final Antichrist, the last one. Then he brings in war. His totalitarian rule brings in war, and the result of war is economic failure or collapse. And it's funny because when he talks about the black horse, he says, do not touch the oil and the wine. That means there will be a ruling class that will remain intact when economic failure happens as a result of war. And then it brings us to the pale horse, which, by the way, when Christians are gone, because they'll be raptured at this point, the end result of totalitarianism by the Antichrist during this time is the death of a quarter of the world's population. That is literally 2.5 to 3 billion people. Imagine what that looks like when Christians aren't there. Right now, we see 100 million people dying in the last century as a result of totalitarian rule, communism, and socialism. And that's with Christians here on this earth. Imagine what happens when Christians are not. And that becomes a mandate from the Bible, based on Bible prophecy, that we are supposed to fight. Listen, I don't stand up and tell people to vote for Trump because I believe we're going to win the election. I do it because God commands me to do it. And if God shows us his grace and allows that to take place,
yes,
then we stand and we say, to God be the glory.
Pastor James, allow me to read this email, this tweet here that was sent out by a pastor by the name of Pastor Ray Ortland. So Pastor Ray Ortland is a very well-known pastor that said this: never Trump, this time Harris, always Jesus. How should we think about pastors who say such a things as this?
If you go to that man's church, run the heck away from his church, because what he just shared with you is brutally demonic. And one of the things I want to say very, very clearly here, and this involves just sharing a small little story of something that happened with me about 4 months ago. Maybe it was more than that. It was about 6 months ago when President Trump had announced his newly formed position with respect to abortion. One of the things that I did was I took to Instagram and even made a few YouTube videos. And let me just simply say this: erroneously said that I would not vote for somebody like President Trump, knowing that I had voted for him every single time and proudly voted for him and encouraged other people to vote for him. But I said I could not vote for him if he's taking this stand on abortion, especially as a father who has 3 children, a 6-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 2-year-old, all adopted by the grace of God, amazing children that I love. I hate abortion. But here's the thing that I learned very quickly when I came to that conclusion. You see, I was hoping to get other pastors to rally against me and maybe help to change President Trump's mind. But there's something that God showed me, and I was very convicted by it, which is why I'm taking the stand that I'm taking. And that's this: first and foremost, Kamala Harris hates life. She is part of the community and the world of death. She is a neo-Malthusian, a completely angry and embittered and enraged individual who has a bloodlust for the life of children. How in the world can you trust somebody like Kamala Harris to take care of your life after watching what she did to this country over the last 4 years? And this is the conclusion that I came to when I started really thinking about this and doing some soul searching. Look at what President Trump did in the 4 years he was in office, and look at the last 4 years. Let me take one step further when we talk about pro-life. Roe v. Wade was overturned. We thought no way it would be overturned. It was overturned because of the Supreme Court justices.
That's right.
That was actually brought in by President Trump. And I want to make one more statement because this is really critical. It's important everybody know this. When Roe v. Wade was overturned, the hardcore, death-loving, ridiculous Democratic left, the haters of life, went into a panic and went on their way to get out every kind of other abortive tool that they can. And we went from 900,000 babies being killed when Roe v. Wade was overturned to what will be 1.7 million babies dying by the end of this year because of what Kamala Harris did, because of what Joe Biden did. And we will see that number double because they have a love for death. And let me make this position very clear. How can you trust anybody to take care of your life when they hated you before you were even born? And I want to make one more statement. President Trump loves listening to godly men. He is open to listening to pastors. And I have a deep-rooted personal love for a man like that who would give up absolutely everything to make this country better, and also to understand that he's the only president that stood in the March for Life. He is the president that did more in the last 4 years for the unborn than any other president in U.S. history. And now all of a sudden we're going to get on this high horse and say we're not voting for him? That is a satanic ploy. I'm sorry, I just have to say it.
No, you don't need to apologize. Final issue here, James, is Israel. Donald Trump was very, very good on Israel, moved the embassy to Jerusalem, something I know is near and dear to your heart and your audience. Why should Donald Trump earn the support of Christians who care about the nation of Israel? 1 minute remaining.
I will just tell you, this is very, very important. You should do it because Donald Trump has historically lent out his support, even probably more so than any other president in U.S. history. Once again, he didn't talk. He brought it into action. He brought the U.S. embassy into Jerusalem. Listen, Yerushalayim has been the very place of the heart of every Jew that's out there, and he stood for the right for Jews to continue to live in their homeland without being disturbed. And I'm a man. Listen, I can tell you this right now. I understand what they mean when they say ben shah bad. Most of these people don't understand. You got these college students walking around with their kafiyas around their neck, and they have no idea what they represent. They don't understand our culture, our background. They don't speak our language. Yet Donald Trump seems to understand it all. And the work that he's done in Israel has been remarkable. And I am grateful to God Almighty for what Donald Trump has done for Israel and what I know he'll continue to do for Israel, which is why our nation will be blessed. I will bless those that bless thee, and I will curse those that curse thee, is what God said concerning the nation of Israel. Donald Trump knows that because he's listening to pastors, and that's why he's blessing Israel, so that the United States of America will be blessed. It's that simple.
Donald Trump is a great president, and you and I both wish that we want the Republican Party to become more pro-life in the future. But we're one day out from the election. We're not going to fix that. So talk about the issues, the biblical principles of, first, why a Christian cannot vote for Kamala Harris, why that is irreconcilable, and then make the case for Donald Trump through a biblical context. So start with Kamala Harris and the Democrats, and then with Donald Trump.
Okay, Kamala Harris cannot be voted for because Kamala Harris hates the God of our fathers. And I think this is important because you might be watching me and you may not be a Christian. You may not even care about Christianity, and that's okay. God honors your free will, and of course, so do I. But the problem is this: freedom is a direct function of God intervening in our lives and providing it for us. Our founding fathers created the Constitution with a referendum that was predicated upon biblical principles. I mean, even right down to how it classified slaves. There was a process that was involved. And it's funny because when you start looking at all of the 27 amendments that we have in the Constitution, and specifically the first 10, which we know is the Bill of Rights, it was all predicated upon biblical ideas, the idea behind our freedom and what that freedom looks like. And if you think about it, what they're doing to Donald Trump right now, they violated his First Amendment rights, his definitely his Fourth and Fifth, easily his Seventh Amendment, his Eighth Amendment rights. You think about the things that are going on. If they can do that, if Kamala's administration can do that to Donald Trump right now, imagine what they can do to you for experiencing freedom. And if Kamala gets voted into office, from day one, this is what's going to happen. Day one, we will become a socialist country. Day one, and I promise you, this is going to happen. They're going to go after religious freedom even more than they ever have before.
That's correct.
And the other thing that they're going to do is they're going to stack the Supreme Court. They are going to take away the Supreme Court's ability to rule based on the language of the Constitution, and rather it's going to become an activist mechanism that is designed to destroy the very freedoms that the Founding Fathers chose to create within us. And I think that this is very, very important. And this is the reason why they're coming after our Second Amendment rights, because our Second Amendment rights were created by the Founding Father to defend our First Amendment rights. And when you begin to think about all of these other things that settle around it, you know, an expansion of the Fifth Amendment based on what was written in the 14th Amendment regarding these protection rights that we have, it's remarkable. All of that goes away if Kamala Harris is voted into office. Every last bit of it.